Hi, friends. Welcome to a discussion on permanent establishment, Article 5. These are some of the terms used here: CBDT, Central Board of Direct Taxes; DTA, Double Tax Avoidance Agreements; PE stands for Permanent Establishment; and of course, ITA is Income Tax Act 1961. So, this is the agenda for this discussion, fairly comprehensive agenda. Definition of the term PE, what are included, further inclusions, what are excluded, deemed PEs, insurance enterprise permanent establishment, non applicability to independent agents, non constituent of PE, closely related entities, and concerns relating to COVID, based on which OECD has come up with its own set of recommendations, and of course, a quick summary of the entire article. Moving forward, now before we get into the technicalities, for any business income to be taxed, which we would be seeing in Article 7, the law categorically states that there must be a permanent establishment in the country of source. Now, what is a permanent establishment? I mean, for someone, it could be an office. For someone, it could be place of execution of work, need not necessarily be an owned place. It could be a chamber in a court. It could be possibly a ship located out of a jurisdiction. So it can take, for some cases, it could be a construction site or a dependent agent who is acting on behalf of a non-resident. So there could be multiple scenarios in which the term PE can be read into. And the fact that the existence of PE is very important for taxing business income makes this particular article extremely relevant. And from a jurisprudence perspective, the concept of PE is one of the most important contributions to international law, international tax law to be a lot more specific, and is a significant feature of bilateral tax treaties in force throughout the world. And PE is a term defined in tax conventions to determine when a non-resident's business income is taxable in the country of source. The term PE effectively creates a nexus between the source country and the business. Moving further, let's quickly look at Article 5.1. For the purpose of this convention, the term PE means, so as we saw earlier, means is an exhaustive definition. It's a fixed place of business through which the business of an enterprise is wholly or partly carried on. Now, again, when we look at it, we are to dive deeper. This article, which is Article 5.1, is a generic definition which says there must be a fixed place. Now, it says the place must be fixed and that place should be used to carry on the business of an enterprise, and the enterprise shall carry on such business either wholly or in part. So when we say the word fixed, it effectively means it's a place which has some sort of permanency. Further, the words place of business implies that there shall be a place and such place shall be used for the purposes of business. So when we say the words wholly or partly, what does it imply? It implies that an enterprise need not carry on its activities in entirety out of a single place. So you can have 5 or 6 branches in a country. So a German company can have 5 to 6 branches in India, and each of these branches could tantamount to a PE. So therefore, the entire business is not carried on through a single PE, but a part of it is carried on through a single PE. Now moving on. What do you mean? What are included within the definition of the term PE? Article 5.2. So the term PE includes, if you look at it, friends, when you go back, here in the first case, it says it means a fixed place. Now when we come back to 5.2, it includes, so here we are expanding the scope of the definition, especially a place of management, a branch, an office, a factory, a workshop, a mine, an oil or a gas well, a quarry, or any other place of extraction of natural resources. So 5.2 is only a descriptive section, because 5.1 restricted the term PE where it has to have a fixed place, but this gives you a huge list of places which can fall within the ambit of the term PE. So some of the unique places are place of extraction of natural resources or a place of management can also be regarded as a PE apart from a branch, office, factory or a workshop. Some of the interesting extracts from model commentary in this regard. When one is looking at the operations of a particular enterprise through the common types of permanent establishments like offices, factories, the requirements of para 1 must also be met. What does it mean? So if I were to look at a branch or an office, this must be a fixed place for the particular business. It is not that he gives an address here and then he gives another address at a later point in time and then you call each of these as branches. No. Article 5.2 presupposes the existence of permanency as a virtue when you look into a place of management, a branch, an office, or a factory or a workshop. Hope it makes it clear. The term any other place of extraction of natural resources should be interpreted broadly to include places of extraction of hydrocarbons, whether onshore or offshore. So you would, classic example, if you are from India, you would look at Bombay High as a place where oil is extracted. It's in international waters where India has economic rights. But if you look at a place like Saudi where you have onshore drills, now there, that place where you drill will also be deemed as a permanent establishment. Now moving on. 5.3 further expands the scope of the definition of the term permanent establishment. It says the term PE also encompasses a building site, a construction, assembly or installation project or supervisory activities in connection therewith, but only if such site, project or activities lasts for more than 6 months. Let's take the case of an engineering company. Let's say a company like L&T. It goes and sets up a refinery in Saudi Arabia. Now, it goes there. It spends, let's say, 9 months to construct that refinery. Now that refinery will be deemed, the construction site of the refinery will be deemed as a permanent establishment since the site activities have lasted for more than 6 months. Now coming further, the furnishing of services including consultancy services by an enterprise through employees or other personnel engaged by the enterprise for such purpose, but only if activities of that nature for the same or connected project within a contracting state for a period or periods aggregating 183 days in any 12-month period commencing or ending in the fiscal year concerned. What does it mean? Let us say a factory is being built in India, say in Gujarat, and the owners have engaged a firm from Netherlands to oversee the execution of the project. In such circumstances, if the consulting services provided by the Netherlands firm in India would be deemed to have a PE if the personnel of the Netherlands company stayed in India for a period exceeding 183 days within any 12 months of a previous year, or let's say that the Netherlands firm has engaged a domestic firm whom they are overseeing. You see, then the activities of those firm which oversees this particular Indian activity on behalf of the Netherlands firm, the number of days on which they were also present will also be counted to determine the period of 183 days. Because if you look at the language, the furnishing of services including consulting services by an enterprise, by the Netherlands firm through its own employees or through the personnel engaged by the enterprise for such purpose. So it engages another domestic firm but who report to the Netherlands firm, not to the owner of the project in India. Then also the total period taken by both these people will be considered to arrive at this 183 days. If we are to understand, friends, what are the activities covered for the purposes of PE? Building site, construction, assembly or installation, 6 month threshold. Consulting services, either directly through its own employees or other personnel, again 183 days. Please understand, we are only looking at the UN Model Convention. Actual provisions will vary based on bilateral negotiations between countries. So if we were to look at the notes from model commentary, specific notes, the term building site or construction or installation project includes not only the construction of building but also roads, bridges, canals, or the renovation, which involves more than mere maintenance of buildings, roads, bridges, and canals, the laying of pipelines, excavation, and dredging. Similarly, installation is not restricted to installation related to a construction project. It also includes the installation of a new equipment such as complex machine in an existing building or outdoors. A site exists from the date on which the contractor begins work. So, we have to arrive at that 6 months or 183 days in the country of source. The site shall continue to exist until the work is completed or it is permanently abandoned. A site should not be regarded as ceasing to exist when the work is temporarily discontinued. In a fiscally transparent entity like what we saw for partnerships in certain circumstances, the 6-month test applies at the entity level and not at the individual member level. That's a very important clarification. Now let's look at some of the India specific treaties. India Singapore, para 3 of Article 5, a building, site or construction, installation or assembly project constitute a PE only if it continues for a period in excess of 183 days in any fiscal year. Similarly, para 6 states that an enterprise shall be deemed to have a PE in a contracting state if it furnishes services other than those referred to in para 4 and 5, which we'll be looking at it later, and technical services, which is fees for technical services as defined in Article 12, within a contracting state, either through its employee or other personnel, only if the activities of the nature continue for a period aggregating 90 days in a fiscal year, and where the activities are performed for a related enterprise within the meaning of Article 9. Article 9 talks about associated enterprise for a period or periods exceeding 30 days. So they've got two different yardsticks. For independent entities it is 90 days, and for associated enterprises it is 30 days. Similarly, when you look at para 6 talks about a case of service PE as we look at it, because again when you go back, friends, if you see the activities, when you look at para 5.3 clause B, this is effectively what in international tax parlance what we call as the service PE. By virtue of rendering a service in a third party jurisdiction, you create a permanent establishment. You need not necessarily have an office there, but the fact that you have spent more than 183 days rendering a service, it makes it a case for a PE. If you look at the Indo-German Treaty, para 2 of Article 5, the term PE includes, amongst other things, a building site, construction site, installation or assembly project where the activities continue for a period in excess of 6 months. It does not specifically say in a fiscal year or otherwise. And there is no concept of service PE in India, Germany, DTA. So if you look at it, friends, see, what we are seeing is a comprehensive or a recommended template version. But bilateral negotiations completely have a different story based on case-specific circumstances. Moving on, exclusions from the term PE, Article 5.4. Notwithstanding anything contained in the previous provision. So it's a non-abstain clause. The term PE shall be deemed not to include the use of facilities solely for the purpose of storage or display of goods or merchandise belonging to the enterprise. So we're talking about use of facility for storage of goods, maintenance of stock of goods or merchandise belonging to the enterprise solely for the purpose of storage or display. Again, maintenance of stock of goods belonging to the enterprise solely for processing by another enterprise. Maintenance of a fixed place solely for purchasing the goods or for collecting information. Please understand, when it talks about processing, it is processing by another enterprise. So if you maintain stocks for your own processing, it will be deemed as PE. Maintenance of fixed place solely for the purpose of carrying on for the enterprise any other activity. Now, the maintenance of a fixed place of business solely for any combination of activities between A to E, provided that such activity, or in the case of subpara F, the overall activity of the fixed place is of preparatory or auxiliary in character. That's very, very important. And so, where the activity which is performed in the source jurisdiction is preparatory or auxiliary in nature. Let's take an example. You are a dealer in, let's say, cars. You are a manufacturer of cars out of Germany, and you're going to sell cars to dealers in, let's say, Mumbai. You have a warehouse at the customs where you import, keep the cars in the warehouse till the time the goods are dispatched. This clearly looks at a case where there is a facility which is solely used for the purpose of storage or display of goods or merchandise belonging to the enterprise. Just, of course, we do have a decision of Seagate with AR verdict which talks about warehouse can also be deemed as a PE. But with due respects, we are of a different opinion. And the particular article also categorically states if a place is used only for the purposes of storage of goods or for display, then this will not form part of PE. Similarly, you would see the definition of the term business connection and the explanation to section 9(1) of the Income Tax Act, where again a place which is meant habitually used for storage of goods or merchandise, we'll be seeing that later, will not be deemed as a business connection. So similarly, coming back, so if it's used only for the purpose of storage or for maintenance of stock belonging to the enterprise solely for display or storage, or for processing by any other enterprise, maintenance of a fixed place solely for the purpose of purchasing goods or merchandise or collecting information. So let's look at an inverse situation. An Italian leather goods manufacturer has a facility in India where the leather purchased from different parts of the country are stored and then used for shipment to Italy. That facility will not be deemed as a permanent establishment. Similarly, maintenance of a fixed place of business solely for the purpose of carrying on for the enterprise any other activity. The maintenance of a fixed place of business solely for any combination of activities mentioned in the above A to E, provided they are preparatory or auxiliary in nature. So there are a zillion decisions on what is preparatory or auxiliary in nature. That's a separate area of debate. But let's try and understand at the higher level, what do you mean by preparatory or auxiliary in nature? Carrying on any activity of preparatory, which is activity carried on in contemplation of carrying on an essential and significant part of the activity of the enterprise, or auxiliary character, which is activity carried on to support without being part of essential and significant part of activity of the enterprise. So give you an example what we mentioned here. APTE Limited is an investment fund based in Singapore. It sets up an office in India solely for the purpose of collecting information on possible investment opportunities. The office in India thus shall not be termed as a permanent establishment. So these are preparatory or auxiliary activities. When we look at notes from model commentary, this para lists a number of business activities which are treated as exceptions to the general definition laid down in para 1, because even though you might have a fixed place, it may not be regarded as a permanent establishment. The common feature of these activities are they are generally preparatory or auxiliary in nature. However, it is difficult to distinguish between which activities are preparatory or auxiliary or otherwise. The decision criterion here shall be whether or not the activity of fixed place of business in itself forms an essential and significant part of the activity of the enterprise as a whole. Because for some businesses, doing preparatory activity itself could be its core activity. So in such circumstances, this could be deemed as a business connection or a permanent establishment. To give you an example, imagine a company's entire business itself is to manage inventory for others. And in such cases, it has customs bonded warehouses in all the ports to aggregate inventory and export it to the respective places. Automatically, that becomes a case for becoming a permanent establishment, even though the list of activities falls within the excluded list. Next, non-applicability of exclusions from permanent establishment, 5.4.1. So this is what we call as the dependent agent principle. Para 4, which we saw about exceptions or exclusions, shall not apply to fixed place that is used or maintained by an enterprise if the same enterprise or a closely related enterprise carries on business activities at the same place or at another place in the same contracting state, and that place or other place constitutes a permanent establishment for the enterprise or closely related enterprise under the provisions of this article, or the overall activity resulting from the combination of activities carried on by the two enterprises at the same place or by the same enterprise or closely related enterprise of the two enterprises is not of a preparatory or auxiliary character, provided that the business activities carried on by the two enterprises at the same place or by the same enterprise or closely related enterprise at the two places constitute complementary function that are part of a cohesive business operation. So let's look at an example. A company has 5 activities from manufacturing to ultimate sale. Let's say one of these activities, if I were to go back to the list of auxiliary preparatory activities, one of these activities, let's say storage of goods for the purpose of display, and the other activity is to collect information from some about the domestic market, and the third activity is about doing a sale transaction, ultimately a sale transaction. So imagine a company, instead of doing all these 3 activities in one entity, breaks it up as 3 different entities, and each of these entity does only one activity. So individually, if you notice friends, all the activities could look like preparatory or auxiliary in nature and could possibly fall within the exception criteria. However, collectively, if I were to look at all the 3 activities, since they are all related persons, either at the same place or at another place in the same country, in the same contracting state, it looks like complementary activities, and together, all the 3 taken together, it does not look like a preparatory or an auxiliary function. This is what is being contemplated under 5.4.1, non-applicability of exclusions from permanent establishment. Hope this makes sense. And if we are to look at the notes from model commentary, the purpose of this para is to prevent an enterprise from fragmenting its activities to qualify for specific activity-based exemption. It provides guidance when an enterprise or a group of closely held related enterprises attempt to circumvent the preparatory or auxiliary activity rule in para 4 by fragmenting a cohesive business operation into several operations. Deemed permanent establishment, Article 5.5. Notwithstanding anything contained in para 1 and 2, but subject to the provisions of para 7, where a person is acting in a contracting state on behalf of another enterprise, that enterprise shall be deemed to have a PE in that state in respect of any activities which that person undertakes for the enterprise, if such person habitually concludes contracts or habitually plays a principal role leading to the conclusion of contracts that are routinely concluded without material modification by the enterprise, and these contracts are in the name of the enterprise or for the transfer of the ownership or for getting of the right to use property owned by that enterprise or that the enterprise has a right to use, or for the provision of services by that enterprise, unless the activities of such person are limited to those mentioned in para 4, which are preparatory and auxiliary, which if exercised through a fixed place of business other than the fixed place for which 4.1 would apply, would not make this fixed place a PE under the provisions of that para, where it falls within the ambit of preparatory or auxiliary in nature, or the person does not habitually conclude contracts nor plays a principal role leading to conclusion of the contracts, but habitually maintains in that state a stock of goods or merchandise from which that person regularly delivers goods or merchandise on behalf of the enterprise. So let's look at it. Let's take it part by part. For notwithstanding anything contained in 1 and 2, but subject to 7, we'll look at 7 in a while. Where a person is acting in a contracting state, this is exactly it's very similar to your business connection definition. under section 9(1) explanation in India. where a person is acting in a contracting state on behalf of an enterprise, that enterprise shall be deemed to have a PE in that state in respect of any activities which that person undertakes. So, let's say a company in Japan which is engaged in the business of sourcing orders from India, sourcing components from India, purchase or sale orders. Now, it has a person in India who habitually concludes contracts. That used to be the activity test. But now this person in India does not conclude. He prepares a contract, he sends it to Japan for signing. Here, even though he doesn't conclude, he plays a principal role. This is a recent introduction where what we call as a principal purpose test. If he does all activities which are required to effectively conclude the contract, and these contracts are in the name of the Japanese company, or they transfer ownership or for granting the right to use of property owned by the Japanese company, or for provision of services by that entity, then unless the activities of such person are limited to those mentioned in para 4, which are preparatory and auxiliary in nature, which even if it is excised through a fixed place would not tantamount to PE, they would fall within the ambit of the term permanent establishment. So, if we are to look at it, friends, if a foreign company has an agent in the country of source who concludes contracts or does all principal activity which are required to conclude a contract, then that person shall be deemed as a permanent establishment. The second scenario is where the person does not habitually conclude contract or does not play a principal role, but he maintains in that state a stock of goods or merchandise from which that person regularly delivers goods on behalf of the enterprise. So if the Indian agent of the Japanese company maintains stock of goods in India for delivery on behalf of the Japanese company, then again that person shall be deemed as a permanent establishment, even though he may not have a right to conclude contract. So it's a fairly interesting case. This is what we call as a scenario of dependent agent PE, so or agency PE as you might call it. So this para talks about agency PE, and accordingly certain agents acting in a contracting state on behalf of an enterprise shall be considered to be PE on behalf of the company for which they are operating. Thus, to qualify as an agency PE, you should be concluding contracts without material or you should be instrumental in conclusion of contracts where whatever you propose get concluded without material modification. For a dependent agency PE to exist, it is essential that the dependent agent must have acted on behalf of the enterprise, and the act of such agent should be binding on the enterprise. Similarly, when we use a phrase conclude contracts in the name of the enterprise, it indicates that the agent should not merely act as a negotiator, he should have the power to decide and conclude transactions. Now, if you see, friends, you would have seen the term habitually concludes contracts. So, what do you mean by the term habitually concluding contracts? So, conclusion of a contract is basically based on the legal procedures which are appropriate in a particular jurisdiction. If acceptance of offer results in contract by third party under relevant contract law, contract is deemed to be concluded even if it is signed outside the source state. The person negotiating all elements and details of a contract in a source state which binds foreign enterprises leads to contract conclusion even if signature is not done by another person outside the source state. And the fact that the article uses the language habitually effectively means that this is a routine activity or an activity which is expected to perform routinely based on the terms of engagement. Moving on. So, agency PE, either he habitually concludes contract or does everything else which is required to conclude a contract. Second scenario, he doesn't conclude but maintains stock for delivery of goods or merchandise. Then again, agency PE is to be created. Insurance enterprise PE, notwithstanding anything contained in the preceding articles, but subject to the provisions of para 7, which talks about independent agent. An insurance enterprise of a contracting state shall, except in regard to reinsurance, be deemed to have a PE in the other contracting state if it collects premiums in the territory of that other state or insures risks situated therein through a person. So please be very clear, friend. A foreign insurance company, say an insurance company based out of Netherlands, is deemed to have a PE in India if it collects premium in India if it insures risks situated in India through a person. So accordingly, these are the two important criterion: collection of premium and having a dependent agent situated in India. And when you look at model commentary, this clause was necessary because insurance agents generally have no authority to conclude contracts. So they might help you secure risk assets in a jurisdiction, but they may not have the authority to conclude contracts. If an insurance agent is independent, the profits of the insurance company attributable to his activities are not taxable in the source state because the provisions of Article 5 would be fulfilled and the enterprise would not be deemed to have a permanent establishment. So, because the moment you have an independent agent, the profits of that company are an independent agent does not create a permanent establishment that you would see, because that's a fundamental rule in determination of PE. We'll be seeing Article 7, and that provision is also available within the scope for business connection as well in Section 9. Non-applicability to independent agent. So this is a very, very important criterion. You would have seen in Article 4, 5 and 6 subject to Articles Article 5 and 6, I'm sorry, subject to Para 7. What does Para 7 say? Paras 5 and 6 talks about agency PE, and we also saw the case for an insurance contract. Shall not apply where the person acting in a contracting state on behalf of an enterprise of the other contracting state carries on the business in the first mentioned state as an independent agent and acts for the enterprise in the ordinary course of that business. Where, however, a person acts exclusively or almost exclusively on behalf of one or more of the enterprises to which it is closely related, that person shall not be deemed to be an independent agent within the meaning of this para with respect to such enterprise. I'll give you an example. Let's say you have a company based out of US. Let's assume this company is a software license owner. Now it has an agent in India who acts as a reseller. Now this person is a reseller who distributes the products of not only this company but 10 other companies. Now he is no longer a dependent agent, he is an independent agent. Now imagine in this scenario, this person in India works for 10 other companies, but all these 10 companies are related parties. Here it creates a case for dependent agent, and automatically the dependent agent becomes a permanent establishment. That's what is being explained under Article 5.7. If we are to look at the notes from model commentary, a person would fall within the scope of Para 7 if he will not constitute a PE of the enterprise on whose behalf he acts, only if the person is independent both legally and economically and is acted in the ordinary course of his business. Whether a person is independent of the enterprise represented depends on the extent of obligations which this person has vis-a-vis the enterprise. Where the person's commercial activities for the enterprise are subjected to detailed instructions or comprehensive control by the enterprise, such person cannot be regarded as independent of the enterprise. So even though he might claim to be independent, if the real trigger is abroad, then the person would be deemed as only a dependent agent. Further, when a person acts exclusively or almost exclusively, so here again, what is almost exclusively is not, or rather cannot be defined. So therefore that has to be worked out on a case-to-case basis. Non-constituent of PE, Article 5.8. The fact that a company which is a resident of a contracting state controls or is controlled by a company which is a resident of the other contracting state, or which carries on business in that other state, shall not itself constitute either company a PE of each other. So let's take an example. You have an Indian company where and the holding company is based out of US. The holding company outsources its back office operations to the Indian company. Now, the Indian company is controlled by US. The US company controls the Indian company. That doesn't make the Indian company a PE of the US company, nor does it make the US company a PE of the Indian company. So that PE needs to be determined on the basis of function and not on the basis of control. That is the moot point which is being enunciated by Article 5.8. So typically holding subsidiary relationships or group company transactions, merely because an entity of one country has a subsidiary or vice versa, it cannot lead to the creation of a PE, and facts and circumstances needs to be examined. Morgan Stanley decision is a very, very classic case in this regard. So if we are to look at closely related entity, Article 5.9, for the purpose of this article, a person or an enterprise is closely related to an enterprise if, based on all the relevant facts and circumstances, one has control of the other or both are under the control of the same person. In any case, a person or an enterprise shall be considered to be closely related to an enterprise if one possesses directly or indirectly more than 50% of beneficial interest in the other company. And in case of a company which has, in case of a company, more than 50% of the aggregate vote and value of the company's shares or beneficial equity interest, or for any other person, directly or indirectly, more than 50% of beneficial interest, or in the case of a company, more than 50% of the aggregate vote and value of the company's shares, or of the beneficial equity interest in the company, in the person and the enterprise, or in the two enterprises. So typically, this article defines what we mean by closely related entity. It talks about a 50% beneficial relationship between each other. So if A is in US and B is in India, these two are related if it has one entity controls directly or indirectly more than 50% of voting rights, beneficial interest, equity voting, whatever you call it, or they are mutually controlled by the same parent. This is what is at least proposed as a definition for closely related entity. If you look at 92A, which defines the term associated enterprises, there we have 26% as the threshold. In some cases for lender, we are talking about 10%, guarantor 90%. So there are multiple thresholds which are available for different types of transactions for the case for closely related entities. So the first para provides that a person is closely related if one has control over the other or both are under the common control, and this can be considered only if there is a direct or an indirect ownership of at least 50% of beneficial interest or voting rights. Now if we are to quickly brush through what is there in Income Tax Act. So Income Tax Act, the equivalent of PE, we use the term business connection, and business connection can be studied from two perspectives. One, income from business activity carried out through a person who is acting on behalf of a non-resident. Second case, significant economic presence of a non-resident in India. In both these circumstances, so PE can arise from two circumstances. One is virtual, the other is real. For virtual, it is what we call a significant economic presence. It is yet to be notified what the thresholds are. But when it comes to the real one, it is if there is a person who is acting on behalf of a non-resident, then profits which are attributable to the operations or transactions carried out in India, which are is deemed as income, which is deemed to accrue or arise in India. So which is why person acting on behalf of non-resident, we have definition of the term business connection, which clearly says that the person should have habitually exercised in India a right to conclude contracts, or should have at least played a principal role in conclusion of contract, like what we saw in Article 5. He has no such authority to conclude or play a principal role, but maintain stock of delivery similar to what we saw there. What is also being added is if he secures in India mainly or wholly for the non-resident or their group companies, any orders in India, then again that person shall be deemed as being a permanent establishment or a business connection. And since the section uses the word habitual, we are talking about a scenario where it is such rights or powers are being exercised regularly. Business connection shall not include activities carried on by an independent agent, and an agent is supposed to be independent if he or she does not work mainly for that entity or for their group entities alone. Again, where we saw dependent or almost dependent on the group companies for the purpose of independent agent, what we saw in Article 5. Significant economic presence, which is something which is expanding. It's a sunrise area. The government of India felt that companies like Facebooks and Google, Facebooks and Microsofts, all these are engaged in the business of online sale of software or advertisement, but they are not being charged in India, or at least what is being sold to the retail is not charged in India because there is no credible basis for doing it. Which is where the government felt if the number of downloads in India exceed a specific threshold which is yet to be notified, or the number of users exceeds a specific threshold, then it could be deemed as if they are being subject to they are having a permanent establishment. This is what in India what we call as a significant economic presence. But Finance Act 2020 has proposed to defer the applicability of the provisions of SEP. So, significant economic presence technically focuses on substance over form. It talks about transactions shall constitute an SEP in India, irrespective of whether the agreement for such transactions is entered in India, the non-resident has a residence or a place of business in India, or the non-resident renders services in India. And if you look at OECD's guidelines on SEP, it's just as we speak, it's only a public consultation document. The factors that may be relevant for setting interaction with a jurisdiction through digital means to create an SEP are the existence of a user base and the associated data input, the volume of digital content, the maintenance of a website in local language, billing and collection with the local currency, responsibility of final delivery to consumers, provision of support services, sustained marketing and sales promotion activities, either online or otherwise. So there is a big debate which is currently happening because for the first time developed economies are losing their tax base thanks to what I would say is innovative structuring by IT companies, and business assets have never been more easily transferable given the fact that intangibles are now valued much more than tangibles. So sunrise concept like significant economic presence or taxing the gig economy are assuming larger relevance as we speak today. Next, exceptions to business connection under Income Tax Act. Purchase of goods in India for export by a non-resident. Collection of news and views in India for transmission outside India by a non-resident engaged in news agency or publishing activities. Activities confined to display of uncut and unassorted diamond in special zone by a foreign company engaged in the business of mining of diamonds. Shooting of cinematographic films in India by non-resident if such non-resident is an individual who is not a citizen of India, a firm where all partners are non-residents or non-citizens, a company where all shareholders are non-citizens or non-residents. Now this becomes another issue. Well, thanks to COVID-19, what happens? We saw when we went through Article 5, if you're undertaking a project site or an installation or an assembling activity, there are some time frames given. If it exceeds 6 months, it creates a PE. Imagine the project is only for 5 months. And after 3 months, the COVID issue started. So the person is not able to travel for the next 3 months. So he's stuck in the project site. Then once things get back to normalcy, he finishes the work in the remaining 2 months. Now, 5 months is now become 8 months. And he breaches a threshold of 6 months. Automatically, this creates a PE. So these are practical scenarios for which some suggestions have been introduced by OECD. Businesses are mainly concerned that their employees placed in countries other than the usual place of work could create a PE for them. And it is unlikely that COVID situation will create any changes in PE determination. So, because if an employee has traveled from country A to B for a short trip and he's stuck there for 3 months or 6 months, whatever be the scenario, then in such circumstances, automatically that employee becomes a resident, it creates a PE, and all the service PE concept could start kicking. So, therefore, tax administrations of all the affected countries, typically globally all the countries, are required to bring in some very clear provisions. So Ireland's revenue situation or revenue service has issued a guidance to disregard the presence of an individual in Ireland for income tax purposes if the presence of such individual is shown to result from travel restrictions. India has also recently come up with a very similar provision. So this is how OECD's recommendations proactively have been accepted by many both member and non-member states. So therefore, any change in status thanks to COVID travel restrictions should not affect the determination of PE, and that's a stand which nations globally are also taking. Home office PE. So this is something which is again becoming a way of life thanks to COVID. PE must have in general, the perception is a PE must have a degree of permanency, and it should be at the disposal of an enterprise in order for that place to be considered a fixed place of business. Though part of the business could be carried on at such person's home office, it cannot be treated as if it is at the disposal of the enterprise. So therefore, and given the practical limitations, home office should not be creating a PE for two reasons. One, it lacks sufficient permanency. Second, the enterprise does not have control over the premises. Similarly, agency or dependent agent PE. Now, a concern may arise where the activities of an individual temporarily working from home for a non-resident could give rise to a dependent agent PE. That's the other practical challenge. So, under Article 5 of the OECD model, the activities of dependent agent such as an employee will create a PE for an enterprise if the employee habitually concludes contracts. So if you look at India-France treaty, where a person other than an independent agent is acting in France on behalf of an enterprise of India, then the Indian enterprise shall be deemed to have a PE in France if he habitually exercises an authority to conclude contracts, not restricting only to purchase of goods or merchandise, and where he has no such authority, if he maintains such stock for delivery, like what we saw in the earlier case. But an employee's activity in a state is unlikely to be regarded as habitual, and therefore, for a PE to be considered to exist, at least certain degree of permanency is required, and not merely a temporary or a transitionary situation. So, however, a different approach may be appropriate if the employee was habitually concluding contracts on behalf of the enterprise in his or her home before the crisis. So, just because something is done now to overcome a crisis, that cannot be taken as a norm for the purpose of determining PE. Same scenario for construction site PE. We saw this earlier. If thanks to travel restrictions due to COVID-19, you are stuck in a third-party jurisdiction, and the time frame of your stay now exceeds the time frames prescribed in the DTA. Like in India, Singapore, there is a 183-day threshold in a fiscal year. Automatically, those days should not be considered for the purposes of PE. So the summons substance is any change in residential status or any change in the status of the existence or otherwise of a PE thanks to travel restrictions of COVID-19 should not have a bearing on determination of PE. That is a recommendation of OECD, and almost all the countries globally are following the footsteps in this regard. India has already done so, as I mentioned earlier. So to summarize, friends, permanent establishment, we saw the meaning. This is a fixed place. What it includes, we saw the case of branch, office, factory, workshop, etc. Then a building site construction supervisory and consulting activities. Then we saw the case of services of a dependent agent P. It excludes preparatory or auxiliary activities, services of independent agent, and mere exercise of control by one enterprise of the other also does not give rise to P. And if we see the difference over such a large article, it is actually not much. The duration period of 12 months is mentioned here, it is 6 months in UN. It doesn't include OECD, doesn't include the case for service PE, whereas in UN you have. The activity of usage of facility for delivery of goods is also not deemed to be included as PE, which is not specifically mentioned. The activity of maintenance of stock for the purpose of delivery is not mentioned here. Again, it doesn't include the activity of delivery. So, but the differences are by and large superficial. I wouldn't say they are that serious. But from a principle standpoint, both these are only templates. What happens between countries is what is far more important than what the templates recommend. So these were some of the relevant discussions on this topic. Thank you.